They say forgotten places hold forgotten screams, but some screams never really stop. Tonight, I'm going to take you inside 3 real stories that happened in and around mental asylums, places that were supposed to help the sick, but instead became cages of terror. If you think you've seen horror, think again. These are not just scary stories. These are memories that still wake people up at night. If you're brave enough, keep watching. But I warn you, these stories will leave you scarred for life. You ever feel like a place is watching you? Not just the walls or the windows, but something deeper, something alive, waiting for you to make one wrong move. That's what hit me the second I stepped into Blackwood Asylum back in 2013. I was 25, a cocky journalist fresh out of college, chasing a story that'd make my name. Blackwood was perfect, a decaying mental hospital in rural Ohio, shuttered since the 80s after whispers of patient torture, botched experiments, and deaths no one could explain. The locals called it cursed, said the air itself was poisoned with the screams of the forgotten. I didn't buy it. I thought curses were for suckers. I was wrong, dead wrong. Let me take you back to the night I walked into room 17, a night that's still clawing at my soul. Buckle up, because this isn't just a story, it's a warning. I got to Blackwood at dusk, my beat-up sedan rattling down a dirt road that felt like it hadn't seen tires in decades. The asylum squatted against the horizon, a hulking shadow with jagged spires and windows like black, empty eyes. The air was wrong, thick, sour, like rotting fruit mixed with wet earth. I slung my backpack over my shoulder, stuffed with a flashlight, a voice recorder, and a notebook. My plan was simple: poke around the first floor, jot down some creepy details for my article, and crash in the lobby till morning. I wasn't here to play ghost hunter. I wanted facts, something gritty and real to sell to a magazine. But Blackwood had other plans. The front door was half off its hinges, groaning as I pushed it open. Inside, the lobby was a wasteland, peeling wallpaper curling like dead skin, overturned chairs coated in dust, and a reception desk that looked like it had been clawed apart. My sneakers squeaked on the cracked tile, every step echoing louder than it should. I flicked on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the dark, catching glints of broken glass and rusted metal. It was quiet, too quiet, like the place was holding its breath. I shook off the unease. "Just an old building," I muttered, my voice sounding small. I started narrating into my recorder. Blackwood Asylum, main lobby, abandoned since 1987. Signs of vandalism, neglect. I felt like an idiot, but it kept me grounded. I wandered past the lobby, poking into side rooms filled with moldy files and shattered medical equipment. My article was practically writing itself, until I found the staircase. It was tucked behind a collapsed vending machine, leading up to the second floor where the patient rooms were. The steps were warped, coated in grime, but something pulled me toward them. Call it curiosity, call it stupidity. I climbed, each creak of the wood spiking my pulse. At the top, a long hallway stretched out, lined with numbered doors, most bolted shut or boarded up. The air up here was heavier, like breathing through a wet cloth, and that sour smell was stronger, almost choking. Then I saw it. Room 17. Unlike the others, its door was wide open, the darkness inside beckoning like a trap. I hesitated, my flashlight beam trembling as it swept the doorway. "Don't be a coward," I told myself, stepping inside. The room was small, claustrophobic, with a rusted bed frame bolted to the floor and a single chair that looked like it had been through a war. The walls were the worst, covered in scratches, deep and jagged, like someone had torn at them with their bare hands. Some were so fresh they looked wet, glistening in the light. My stomach twisted. Who'd been in here? What kind of hell had they lived through? I ran my fingers over the marks, the grooves rough and uneven. They weren't random. They formed patterns, swirls, crosses, things that almost looked like words, but weren't. I started recording again, my voice shaky. Room 17, second floor. Wall damage suggests extreme distress. Possible evidence of patient confinement. I was trying to sound professional, but my heart was hammering so loud I could barely hear myself. That's when it started. A faint tapping, like fingernails on metal coming from the hallway. It was slow, deliberate, almost musical. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. "Hello?" I called, the word barely making it out. No answer. Just the tapping, steady as a heartbeat. I stepped into the hall, my flashlight sweeping the shadows. Empty. The sound was louder now, closer, bouncing off the walls like it was circling me. It wasn't random. It had a rhythm, like a code I couldn't crack. My skin crawled, but I followed it, drawn like a moth to a flame. The tapping led me to the end of the hall, where a rusted fire door hung crooked on its frame. I pushed it open, and the sound stopped. Dead silence. My ears rang with it, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're drowning. I turned to head back, but something glinted under a loose floorboard, a corner of yellowed paper. I knelt, prying it free with shaking fingers. It was a patient file, brittle and stained, dated 1974. The name at the top read Eleanor Crane, female, 32. The notes were clinical, cold, admitted for delusional disorder, claims to hear voices, prone to self-harm. The last entry in red ink hit me like a punch. Transferred to isolation, room 17. Deceased, suspected suicide. My hands went clammy. Eleanor. Those scratches. They were hers. I stuffed the file in my bag, my mind racing. I needed to get out, but the tapping started again, faster, frantic, like a warning. The air shifted, growing colder, heavier, like it was pressing me into the floor. The tapping was everywhere now, echoing in my skull, drowning out my thoughts. I ran for the staircase, my boots slamming against the tiles, but the hallway seemed to stretch, the walls pulsing like a living thing. That's when I saw her. She was at the far end, her back to me, standing so still she might have been a statue. A woman, tall and skeletal, in a tattered hospital gown that hung off her like a shroud. Her hair was long, matted, dripping wet though the floor was dry. My mouth went dry. "Hey," I croaked. "Are you okay?" She turned, and I wish she hadn't. Her face was wrong, pale as bone, with eyes like black pits, endless and empty. Her lips were cracked, curled into a smile that stretched too wide, showing teeth that gleamed in the dark. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. She just stared, and it felt like she was peeling me apart, layer by layer. My flashlight flickered, the beam stuttering. In the half-light, she moved, not walked, but glided, her feet hovering an inch above the ground. She was coming for me, fast. I bolted, my scream caught in my throat. The staircase was ahead, but it felt miles away, the hallway twisting around me. Her presence was a weight, cold and crushing, clawing at my back. I could hear her now, not the tapping, but a low, guttural hum, like a prayer in a language I didn't know. It vibrated in my chest, making my ribs ache. I reached the lobby, slamming the door behind me, my hands fumbling with the lock. It wouldn't catch. The tapping started again, slow and mocking, right on the other side. I backed away, my flashlight trained on the handle, waiting for it to turn. It didn't, but I knew she was there, her eyes boring through the wood. I collapsed in a corner, clutching my flashlight like it could save me. Every sound, the wind, the creaks, the drip of a distant leak, was her. I tried my phone. No signal, just a blank screen mocking me. The file was still in my bag, Eleanor's name burning in my mind. I pulled it out, reading by the dim light. She'd been admitted after her husband's death, labeled hysterical. The doctors pumped her full of drugs, locked her in room 17 for observation. The scratches, the tapping, they were her cries, her fight, her refusal to be erased. But the red ink told the truth. She didn't kill herself. They killed her, broke her mind until there was nothing left. The night dragged on, each minute an eternity. I didn't sleep, didn't blink. When dawn finally bled through the windows, I ran, not looking back, not stopping until I was miles away. I never wrote the article. How could I? Words can't capture the way her eyes felt, the way her hum still echoes in my nightmares. I dug into Eleanor's story later, piecing together fragments from old records and local gossip. She'd been a painter, vibrant and kind, until grief tore her apart. The asylum didn't help her. They experimented, dosed her with chemicals that burned away her soul. The locals say she's still there, in room 17, waiting for someone to listen, waiting to be seen. I moved away, burned my notes, tried to forget, but I can't. Every night I hear that tapping, soft but relentless, like she's still reaching out. Sometimes, in the dark, I feel her eyes, those black, endless pits, watching me. I don't go near old buildings anymore. I don't trust open doors. And if you ever find yourself near Blackwood, do yourself a favor. Run. Because once she sees you, she never lets go. Trust me, I'm still running. Have you ever been somewhere so quiet it feels like the silence is screaming? That's what I felt the night I stepped into the basement of Greystone Psychiatric Hospital. It was 2016 and I was 28, scraping by as a night janitor to pay off a mountain of student loans. Greystone, a sprawling complex in upstate New York, was my latest gig. The newer wings were still active, housing low-risk patients, but the old section, Building C, was a relic. Abandoned since the 70s and sealed off like a tomb. The staff avoided it, whispering about bad energy and strange noises. I thought they were just spooked by cobwebs and shadows. Then my supervisor sent me to check for a water leak in Building C, and I walked straight into a nightmare that still got its claws in me. This isn't just a story. It's the truth about the boy who never spoke, and why I'll never be the same. Stay with me, because you need to hear this. It was a frigid February night, my breath puffing in clouds as I crossed the hospital grounds. Building C loomed in the distance, its brick facade crumbling like a rotting tooth. My keys jangled in my pocket, along with a flashlight and a walkie-talkie that crackled more than it worked. The entrance was a chain-link gate, padlocked and plastered with no trespassing signs. I fumbled with the lock, my fingers numb, and slipped inside. The air hit me like a slap, stale, thick with dust and a faint chemical tang, like old antiseptic left to fester. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor, too loud in the stillness. I clicked my flashlight on, the beam slicing through the dark, catching glints of rusted pipes and broken tiles. My job was simple: check the ground floor for leaks, then get out. I moved fast, sweeping my light over walls and corners, finding nothing but dirt and decay. The place was a maze of narrow corridors, lined with locked doors and faded signs for examination room and staff only. It felt like a museum of suffering, every surface stained with the memory of the people who'd been trapped here. I was about to call it quits when I heard it, a soft, high-pitched giggle, like a child playing hide-and-seek. It came from the far end of the hall, where a rusted door marked basement access hung slightly ajar. My skin prickled. Greystone hadn't treated kids in decades. Probably just the wind, I muttered, but my voice sounded hollow. I clicked my walkie-talkie. Mike, you there? I heard something in Building C. Static hissed back, then silence. The giggle came again, sharper, almost taunting, pulling me toward the door. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but I couldn't shake the sound. It was so human, so out of place. I pushed the door open, the hinges screeching like a warning. A staircase descended into darkness, the air growing colder, heavier with every step. I gripped my flashlight tighter, my pulse thudding in my ears. "Hello!" I called, my voice swallowed by the void. Another giggle, closer now, echoing from below. The basement was a labyrinth of storage rooms and forgotten medical equipment. My flashlight caught glimpses of wheelchairs tipped over like skeletons, gurneys draped in cobwebs, and boxes labeled Patient Records 1950 to 1960. The giggle led me deeper, weaving through the maze until I reached a heavy steel door marked Therapy Room B. It was cracked open, just enough for me to slip through. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle. The air here was freezing, so cold it burned my lungs. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was a nightmare. The walls were padded, stained with dark, streaky smears that looked too much like blood. A single chair sat in the center, its leather straps frayed and dangling, like it was waiting for its next occupant. The giggle stopped, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against my chest. Then I saw him, a boy, no older than 10, sitting cross-legged in the corner. He was pale, almost translucent, with dark hair falling over his face. He wore a tattered hospital gown, too big for his scrawny frame, and his head was bowed, a faint smile curling his lips. He didn't look up, didn't move, just sat there, silent as a ghost. "Hey, kid," I said, my voice trembling. "What are you doing down here? You lost?" No answer. I took a step closer, and that's when I noticed his hands, covered in dirt, his fingernails black and jagged, like he'd been clawing through soil. My stomach churned. "Come on, let's get you out of here." He stopped smiling. Slowly, he raised his head, and I saw his eyes. Milky white, no pupils, just blank, endless voids that seemed to suck the light from the room. My breath caught, my flashlight shaking in my hand. He opened his mouth, but instead of words, a low, guttural hum poured out, like a swarm of insects buzzing inside my skull. The hum grew louder, vibrating in my bones, and the room seemed to shift. The walls rippled, the stains twisting into shapes, faces, hands, mouths stretched in silent screams. I stumbled back, my flashlight flickering. "Stay away!" I shouted, but he didn't move. He just stared, his head tilting at an unnatural angle, his smile returning, wider now, showing teeth that were too sharp, too many. The hum became a pulse, pounding in my chest, and the air thickened, like I was breathing molasses. I turned to run, but the door was gone. Not locked, gone, replaced by a blank padded wall. Panic clawed at me. I spun back to the boy, but he was closer now, inches away, his white eyes locked on mine. His hum was deafening, drowning out my thoughts, my screams. The room spun, the walls closing in, the faces in the stains reaching out with clawed hands. I don't know how long I was trapped there. Minutes, hours, an eternity. The boy never blinked, never stopped humming, his presence a weight that crushed my lungs. Then, in a flash, I was outside, sprawled on the frozen grass. My flashlight shattered beside me. My throat was raw, like I'd been screaming for days. My walkie-talkie crackled to life. "Where the hell are you?" Mike's voice. I couldn't answer. I could barely breathe. I quit the next day, but the boy followed me. Not physically, but in my head, in the quiet moments when the world went still. I heard his hum, soft but relentless, in the shower, in my car, in my dreams. I had to know who he was, what he was. I dug into Greystone's history, spending weeks combing through old records and newspaper clippings. In the 1950s, Building C had been a testing ground for experimental therapies on children labeled uncontrollable. One boy, listed as Patient 47, stood out. Admitted in 1953, he was mute, severely autistic, and subjected to electroshock, sensory deprivation, and worse. The records said he died during a procedure, but his body was never recovered. The staff claimed he'd vanished. The locals had a name for him, the Silent Boy. They said he haunts the basement, luring people into his world, a place where time stops, where you're never alone. I tried to move on, to forget. I moved to a new city, got a desk job, swore off late-night shifts, but the hum never stopped. It's there now, as I'm telling you this, a faint buzz in the back of my mind. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of him in reflections, a pale face, white eyes, that horrible smile. Last week, I found dirt under my fingernails, black and gritty, like I'd been digging in my sleep. I don't know what he wants, but I know he's not done with me. If you ever hear a giggle in a place it shouldn't be, don't follow it. Don't open the door, because once the Silent Boy sees you, he never lets go. I'm proof of that, and I'm still trapped in his silence. You ever catch your reflection in a mirror and feel like it's not you staring back? Like something else is wearing your face, waiting for you to notice? That's what happened to me in Ward 4, and I'm still not sure I escaped. It was 2019, and I'd sworn off anything to do with old hospitals after 2 brushes with things I couldn't explain. I was 31, starting fresh in Pennsylvania as a security guard at a private hospital. Modern, clean, the kind of place that felt safe. But Ward 4, an older wing left untouched, was different. The staff avoided it, muttering about bad vibes and lights flickering for no reason. I laughed it off, thinking I'd seen the worst already. Then I met the mirror, and it showed me a darkness I can't unsee. This is my story, and trust me, you won't want to look away, because once you hear this, you'll check every reflection twice. It was my first week on the night shift. The hospital quiet, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional beep of a monitor. My job was straightforward: patrol the main building, check the exits, and do hourly rounds through Ward 4, a relic of the hospital's past used mostly for storage. The wing was on the 3rd floor, reachable only by a creaky elevator that groaned like it resented being used. I didn't mind the solitude. After my last experiences, I preferred empty hallways to crowded ones. I carried a flashlight, a radio, and a key ring that jangled with every step, my only company in the dark. My first round in Ward 4 was uneventful. The wing was a time capsule. Faded linoleum floors, walls yellowed by decades of cigarette smoke, and air that smelled like dust and regret. The rooms were packed with old furniture and medical supplies, everything coated in a fine layer of grime. I moved quickly, my flashlight beam cutting through the shadows, eager to get back to the bright, sterile main building. But on my second round, something stopped me cold. A mirror, full length, and framed in tarnished silver, leaning against a wall in one of the patient rooms. It hadn't been there an hour ago. I would have noticed. Its size, its ornate frame, the way it seemed to gleam in the dark. My reflection stared back, but it felt off. My eyes were too wide, my mouth too small, like a distorted version of myself. I backed away, my heart thudding. Just tired, I told myself, shaking my head. But as I turned, a whisper slithered into my mind. Not from the room, but inside my skull. Look again. It was soft, almost gentle, but it made my skin crawl. I froze, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The whisper came again, louder, more insistent. Look again. I forced myself to keep moving, focusing on the sound of my boots on the floor, anything to drown it out. By the time I reached the elevator, the whisper was a scream, tearing through my thoughts. Look again. I slammed the button, my breath ragged, and the doors closed, silencing it. I told myself it was stress, nothing more. I didn't tell anyone. Who'd believe me? The next night, I had to go back. Ward 4 was part of my route, and I wasn't about to lose my job over a bad feeling. The mirror was still there, exactly where I'd left it, its surface catching the flashlight's glow like it was alive. I avoided looking at it, keeping my eyes on the walls, the floor, anything else. But the whisper returned, slow and deliberate. Look again. It was joined by a pull, like invisible hands tugging me toward the glass. I fought it, digging my heels into the floor, but my body betrayed me, moving step by step until I was inches from the mirror. My reflection wasn't mine anymore. It was me, but older, gaunt, with gray hair and eyes sunken into dark hollows. My reflection smiled, but my face didn't. It raised a hand, pressing it against the glass, and a cold, electric jolt shot through me, like I'd touched a live wire. The room vanished. I was somewhere else, a void, black and endless, where voices screamed in languages I didn't know. Faces pressed against the darkness, their mouths stretched wide, their eyes pleading for release. Hands clawed at me, cold and bony, pulling at my clothes, my skin. In the center of it all was the mirror, floating, its surface rippling like water. My reflection stood inside it, still smiling, but its eyes were black, bottomless pits that sucked at my soul. The whispers became a chorus. You're ours now. You're part of it. I screamed, but no sound came out. The void was swallowing me, piece by piece. I don't know how I got back. One moment, I was drowning in that darkness. The next, I was on the floor in Ward 4, my flashlight rolling across the tiles. My hand was bleeding, a deep gash across my palm, like I'd pressed it against a blade. The mirror was just a mirror again, my reflection normal, but I could still feel those eyes, that smile, watching me. I stumbled out, the whisper chasing me. You can't leave. You're part of it now. I didn't stop running until I was in the main building, my radio crackling with my supervisor's voice asking why I was late. I couldn't answer. My throat was raw, my mind a jumble of fear and shadows. I called in sick for a week, but the whisper didn't stop. It was in my apartment, in my car, in the quiet moments before sleep. Look again. I started avoiding mirrors, covering them with sheets, but it didn't help. My dreams were filled with that void, those faces, that version of me that wasn't me. I had to know what I was dealing with. I dug into Ward 4's history, spending hours in the library, scouring old records and microfiche. The wing had been part of an older asylum, closed in 1972 after a fire killed 27 patients. One survivor, a nurse named Margaret Hale, claimed it wasn't an accident. In a handwritten letter, she wrote that the patients had been offered to something in the mirror, something that fed on their fear and pain. The hospital buried the story, but the mirror stayed, hidden in storage, waiting for someone new to claim. I quit the job, packed my bags, and moved across the state, thinking distance would save me. It didn't. The whisper followed, a constant hum in the back of my mind. 3 months ago, I found a mirror in my new apartment, tucked in a closet I hadn't opened. It was the same one. Same silver frame, same warped glass that seemed to pulse with its own light. I smashed it with a hammer, screaming as the shards scattered across the floor, but every piece reflected my face, over and over, each one smiling that horrible, knowing smile. I swept them up, burned them, but the whisper laughed. You can't break us. I don't sleep much anymore. I can't. Every shadow feels like that void. Every quiet moment a chance for the whisper to return. I've started seeing things. Flashes of my reflection in windows, in puddles. Always older, always smiling. Last week, I woke up with a new cut on my hand, identical to the one from that night, though I hadn't touched anything sharp. I don't know what the mirror is or what it wants, but I know it's not done with me. If you ever see a mirror where it shouldn't be, don't look, don't listen, run, and don't stop, because once it sees you, you're part of it forever. I'm living proof, and I'm still staring into that darkness, waiting for it to claim me.